kind of told you can go and do anything you want in life. You can be anything you want, which to some extent is true. But what they never tell you is that what you think you want might not actually be what's right.
Hey there, welcome to the Career Flipper Podcast. I'm Jenny Dempsey, your host and just a regular person trying to figure out my own career path. And let's be real, I am not some career flipping expert over here. I spent 18 years working in customer experience in the startup tech world, thinking I had things pretty much figured out. And then, life happened. I got laid off. I started freelancing, very small scale. I picked up furniture flipping. I launched this podcast. So I totally get how overwhelming, confusing, and honestly exhausting career pivots can be. And truthfully, I am still figuring it all out as I go. And that's why this podcast exists, because I just have a lot of questions. How do people actually pull off these big career changes without falling apart? How do they keep going when self-doubt creeps in and nothing feels certain and they got $0 in their bank account? How do they juggle side gigs and full-time jobs without totally losing their minds? And instead of spiraling in my own head, which I did many times, I finally figured, why not just start asking people and see what I can learn? So now, every week, I sit down with real people from all over the world, working in all kinds of industries who've made bold career moves. We get into the messy middle, the setbacks, the wins, the what the heck am I doing moments, so that you and I can take the next step with a little more confidence and maybe a few extra tools in our back pockets. And hey, if someone sent you this episode, that's pretty awesome. It means they believe in you. And whatever career shift you're thinking about, you've got people in your corner. Keep on your path. So grab your earbuds, get comfy, and let's have some real talk about flipping careers. Today, I'm chatting with Hannah Slack, Doctor of Philosophy from Sheffield, England. We're diving into her career flip from academia to freelance writing in the marketing industry. Hannah started out wanting to be a historian, as she loved research, but pretty quickly realized that the academic lifestyle just wasn't the right fit for her. The pressure and the stress took a toll on her mental health, leading to anxiety and depression. That's when she started to rethink her path and explore what really made her happy. Hannah shares how she found joy and creative freedom in writing. It became a way to help others through storytelling and gave her an outlet to express herself. Transitioning to freelance writing, though, wasn't easy. Working in different industries opened her eyes to new perspectives and really helped her understand what she truly wanted from her career. She talks about how freelancing requires patience and adaptability because things are always changing, and how feedback, while sometimes overwhelming, is a key to personal growth. We also get into the importance of balance. Hannah learned that finding a healthy balance between work and personal life makes all the difference. And maybe the biggest lesson? Life isn't a race. It's okay to take your time and figure things out. Plus, having support from family and friends makes a huge difference as she navigates these big changes. Hannah's story is a great reminder that it's okay to pivot when something isn't working, and that finding balance and joy matters more than sticking to a plan that doesn't feel right anymore. Let's jump into our conversation now.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Well, doing so good. It's so good to connect with you, and I appreciate you making the time to chat. You know, we know each other. It was last year. I was working on a small scale consulting project. It was a community building project in the materials industry. And a great little team I was working with, doing some really fun work. You were with another company, and we met through that connection virtually. And then eventually we were at the same event together in Paris and met there. And my dog just dropped a bone. So I'm going to leave it in. We're just going to leave it in. You know, this is real life. You got dogs in the background. But we met, we met in Paris in person, and you were just absolutely lovely. And I'm so glad to reconnect with you here today. Tell everybody a little bit about you and who you are and where you are in the world and what you're doing right now.
Oh, thank you. It was so lovely to meet you there as well. 'Cause I've done a lot, I feel, in my few short years. So I'll kind of try to sum it up without, I guess, rambling on too much. Um, but I started my journey at university wanting to be an academic historian. Um, so I knew I wanted to do that when I was about sort of 19, 20, that kind of age, and pursued that, went through all the degrees, started my PhD, and I didn't have enough money to support myself, as most students find. So I started working as a writer and found that that was a lot more enjoyable. It didn't quite have the same mental demands or isolation that the PhD had. So I originally started writing for a student recruitment company, so I was pulling on my own experience a lot. And by the time I'd finished my PhD and realized academic life wasn't going to be for me, I started looking out at other writing opportunities, and that's where I ended up in the materials industry, completely different, and met you. That was a fun stint of my life. I wasn't there too long before I then went back into student work, working at a university in marketing and recruitment. But now I do freelance writing on the side, and that's really the passion project right now.
It sounds like you had it all figured out at 19. Like, this is what I want to do. And I'm curious, how did you know that was what you wanted to do?
That's a big question. I think I went to uni, and I think I was just so dazzled that people got to research the things they were interested in and write about them for a job. And I just loved that. I've always been a very curious person who just deep dives into Google for far too long in the middle of the night. um, so that was really interesting. And then I love the support that I've had from teachers sort of throughout the years. I knew I wouldn't be a good secondary school teacher. Teenagers are not quite for me, professionally. But from an academic sense and lecturing, it just seemed like something that would be really up my alley. That's why I decided on it so young.
And I think that's such an important element because a lot of people listening have similar things where they're like, I knew I wanted to do X, Y, and Z at this age. And it evolves to something completely different. And I always find it so fascinating how people know when it's the thing they want to do. As I'll be very transparent, I had no idea what I wanted to do at 19. And I felt very lost. And honestly, I just majored in English because I liked creative writing. Like, I like to write stories and I didn't want to take math, and that was it. And I didn't know what I was going to do. So I just love it. That's where you began. You knew exactly it and how it's evolved to where you are. So let's just get into the flip, Santa. Tell, let's get into more of that story. Share how you got to be where you are right now.
I think it's probably not like the happiest story, but I think it's an important one. That when you're young, certainly in the UK, I'm sure it's the same in America, you're kind of told you can go and do anything you want in life. You can be anything you want, which to some extent is true, but what they never tell you is that what you think you want might not actually be what's right for you. And that's the lesson that I learned doing my PhD. While I loved doing the research and focusing on my own project, the actual academic lifestyle was just not right for me. And it put me in such a bad mental state, which, a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but anxiety was at an all-time high. Eventually, depression creeped in. It's just one of those things. And I knew it wasn't worth sacrificing my mental health for this if it's that's not the life I wanted. So it was quite hard to kind of let go of that dream and kind of find a new one. And I managed to kind of boil it down to, well, I really enjoy writing. I love stories. I love helping people. And there are different careers I can do in that. And that's how I've kind of found my path.
Yeah. That's, that's a to be young enough to understand that your mental health comes first is incredibly important and says a lot about you as a person and the people that are around you that, hopefully have offered that support as well. Like when you were navigating that, like academia sounds like from what I have heard from others, very burnout culture, very, I mean, you are working long hours and there's just, I don't know if the word toxic environment or if it's just high pressure. But would you feel comfortable talking a little bit more about the things that, you personally like, it was really hard for you? What were those things that really kind of opened your eyes like, yeah, this is not the life I want to live?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really important to be open about it. For me, I really struggled sort of in my final couple years when I was writing. It was the constant feedback, which is good. I appreciate the feedback. But it's the constant you spending years just writing and rewriting and it never feeling good enough. And I think it's a really weird thing to be a PhD student in the academic world because you're training to become like a world leading expert in something, but you're sat around people who've been doing it for decades. So you never quite feel good enough, which is a big thing lots of students talk about anyway, imposter syndrome. And, it's big, not just with students, but that was something I really struggled with was not feeling good enough and then constantly receiving rewrites for my work. And it was just the process, but it just didn't sit well with me. And I just really struggled with it.
Yeah, that sounds exhausting. And what was a pivotal moment? Do you remember anything specific where you're like, all right, no, this needs to change? Like something happened? Because I'm sure it got to a point like after all the feedback, something clicked that you couldn't take it anymore, or you didn't want to take that anymore. Was there something specific that happened?
So I went to a workshop which was about getting a postdoc or some sort of graduate career in academia. And they talked about in history that universities really like it if you move around, if you're willing to go study in Europe, and that you're probably going to be in contracts that are only about 6 months to a year before you might eventually, hopefully, secure a full-time job. And the thought of just constantly moving, because I did my undergraduate degree in a different city, so I did it in Norwich before I then moved to Sheffield. And then I had moved house every single year during that time as well. So the thought of, oh, I'm going to have to potentially move cities, if not countries, just to get a short term job, leave my family behind. I had a secure partner at that time who's still with me. And the thought of leaving him, it was just asking too much at that point. I was like, I've already given so much of myself that I don't want to give up everything else around me.
Yeah, it's so much. That's so much. And it sounds like your family and your partner and your friends were all very supportive of you making the decision. Or was it different for you? What was it like when you told them you're like, I'm not going to continue to pursue this? What was that like?
It was really positive, actually. My boyfriend, he was also doing a PhD. He did one in physics, which is quite different from history. They're a lot more collaborative, but he understood and he also didn't go into academia. He now works in software. So we both sort of supported each other that way. And then my family were really supportive. My mum's very much a free spirit kind of woman. She's a do what you want. Life is for living. If it's not right for you, it's not right for you. I think the only one who was nervous was my dad. He's very supportive, but he was a bit concerned of what are you going to do then? I think he was more scared for me than anything else, which was really nice. But it did kind of keep that fire in me of, oh, I should really have an answer and not go off the rails or he's gonna panic.
Right, right. So when you were kind of navigating that pivot at that moment when you didn't know what you were going to do next, and you're kind of like, ooh, I got my dad looming behind my shoulder, but I got my mom like, yeah, you do you. Um, and you mentioned that there were some things that you kind of narrowed it down, you chiseled away to the things that you really did enjoy and you landed on writing. How did you get to that point? What are some of the things that you did to like figure that out?
So I was fortunate enough to be working as a writer while I was doing my PhD. So I worked 2 days a week. And that's when I realized how much easier writing for non-academic audiences is.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's easy, but it was easier. And I much more enjoyed it, and just being able to write a bit more freely, a bit more honestly, and have better expression with your words rather than having to be so technical all the time.
Mhm.
So I knew I enjoyed that. And then when I was working there, I just gradually sort of got promoted and improved and got through. And I started being involved in more strategy work, which I thought, this is where I should be. This is where the money is. This will help support me. But then I really started to miss the writing side of things. And I was like, actually, that's what I love to do. So I started researching into how do you make writing into a career, because it's not necessarily the easiest.
Yeah. So it sounds like really just kind of tapping into the things that you were already doing and being like, oh, I enjoy this. And then researching, which you're clearly very good at, and getting to this point where you're like, it's almost like you made, and then maybe this is the wrong term, but it was like a calculated risk where you're like, yes, I spent X amount of years studying and getting to this point, but after the, kind of introspective work and the research, the factual research that you did, you made that kind of calculated risk to then pivot to something else. And so you had that writing job while in school. Did you stay there and continue just writing when you decided to not continue with your PhD, or did you go find a job? Like what kind of happened next to get you on, like out of the academia world?
So I stayed on there until I finished my PhD and had submitted and passed and everything. So then I didn't waste my time. I had the qualification.
Yeah.
Um, I could prove through that sense that I'm a very dedicated researcher and can be quite a technical writer. But I stayed on at that company with student recruitment and writing for them, and sort of grew more into the strategy and marketing side. And it was probably about 6 months after I'd done full time with them that I wasn't sure it was for me. I needed to break away from that student side of things, even though I ended up going back. But I needed to try something else and just see what else I could do, which is when I found myself in materials and engineering briefly.
Yes. And so is that just something that you found, like, was it on a job board? Did you apply? Like, how did you land into that totally different industry?
Yeah, that was just on a job board. So I was looking at quite a lot of different jobs. I applied for quite a few. And that's just the one that came through and was of big interest because I was I say the lead writer, I was the only writer. Everyone else in that company were marketers and I was the writer. So it was quite nice because I could shape everything how I want it to be. I can instill my own sort of guidelines and that sense and take real ownership. So that's why I ended up there.
Hey, Jenny here. We'll be right back with Hannah in just a second. I wanted to share a quick message from the sponsor of this episode. As you know, my career path's been a bit squiggly, from customer service to furniture flipping to podcasting to marketing. And there's one golden thread that weaves through it all. Helping people is really at the heart of it for me. And that's why I'm so proud of my customer service training courses over on Udemy for Business. They're packed with lessons I learned during my corporate days, and let's face it, I think we could all use a little more help when it comes to serving our customers, right? Whether we're in a frontline role or whether we are starting our own business, whatever it is, helping others does actually help ourselves, and learning along the way is how we all grow. These courses are virtual, under $50 each, and available around the world. Over 16,000 students have already taken them. Plus, these courses sponsor the podcast, so by checking them out, you're supporting the show too. You can find them over at thecareerflipper.com/courses. That's thecareerflipper.com/courses. I hope you'll check them out. Okay, let's get back to Hannah and the episode now.
Did you have a moment when you were, you're fresh out of the academia world, out of the student kind of perspective? Were there things that maybe, so let me take a step back and re-ask this question, because one of the things that I am finding that I am learning from other people who have flipped their careers is that the things that we have done in the past, maybe we've evolved away from them, but there are things that we have learned that are kind of like what I like to call cookie crumbs that lead us into these new paths that where we're at, where we're still using a lot of the tools and skills and knowledge that we have from these past experiences into these totally new worlds, new industries, new jobs, new career paths, whatever it is. Were you also finding that for yourself?
Oh, completely. Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, a lot of the engineers were quite similar to academics I've worked with, so that was really interesting to see. But also when I was there, I was asked to write a white paper, a research paper on tantalum, metal, which I had never heard of before, which I felt completely out of my depth. But it just meant I sat for a day and just researched, and that was so familiar to me, just in a completely different subject. So it was quite nice to pull on those skills while learning something completely new.
Mhm. Yeah, it is to you to know that it's there. It's in your toolbox and that you're not just completely diving in without any, I don't know, floaties on in a way. Like you do have some support from the things that you've learned in the past. And this is all, I mean, to kind of put it into perspective too for everyone listening, this is relatively recent, right? Because we worked on the in the materials industry. This was just last year. And so this is all very recent for you. Is that right? Like this is all very fresh and you're kind of in the middle of it right now.
Oh yeah, completely.
Yep.
Yeah, so I joined the composites marketing company at the end of 2023. I was there for about 4 months, and then I just started my new job in student recruitment marketing. So I've been jumping around all over the place.
But it's so fresh. And I think this is why it is so great to have these conversations when you're in it because like no matter whether you're sitting at a desk and burnt out thinking about a change or you've made many, many changes, like it's this kind of continuous evolution, right? Like we're in it and we have so many things we can still learn while we're right in the middle of it. So you got this new job. What was it like changing into that? Like what was it? How did that kind of kick off? Because that is also a different industry.
So I'm back in student recruitment. Because bread and butter, you might as well stick with the things you know when you have a mortgage to pay.
Yeah.
um, but that I'm working a bit differently. So I'm not just writing, I'm working as sort of more of a full scale marketer, which is all completely new to me. And that's going well. It's very different because I'm working within a university and they function so differently to like just normal private companies. So there's a lot of learning with the bureaucracy and the processes to go through. But I'm getting there. And they're also really supportive of work-life balance and making sure all sort of people's needs are met, which is great for me because it allows me to be a bit more flexible with my schedule so I can do freelancing on the side, which is nice.
Yeah, that freedom and flexibility to do that is important. And it goes to show that, even for a lot of us who have full-time jobs, thinking that there might be not enough time to do things on the side, but we can kind of like craft our schedules if our full-time employer gives us that freedom and flexibility to do those things on the side. And it sounds like that's really important to you financially, but also like creatively. Like you're able to do those things outside of it that are also very interesting and maybe also very aligned with your interests, right? Like that there is time to do it on the side. There are some people who listen in who, I have a full time job. I can't just leave my job to like do the things I like. What if it's just a little bit on the side and it's crafted in a way that it's not burning you out and taking hours and hours? So how many hours, if it's okay to ask, like with the freelance and on the side, how would you say your day is kind of structured to still be able to do that and still have time, you know, for life outside of work?
Yeah, I mean, no week's the same. It really depends. And that's one of the things which is why I'm quite thankful I didn't just jump all in. I know a lot of people have done it and have been successful, but I've also read a lot of horror stories that jump into freelancing and nothing goes well. And particularly with AI creeping over the horizon, writing is something that I noticed was going to be particularly risky. So in terms of my day, it's kind of like the first few months I had nothing. So I would work, sort of finish around 4:30 in the afternoon, sort of do 8:30 to 4:30, sort of take a little break, and then just be cold emailing people sort of throughout the evening, which is not fun. But it's part of the process, is just trying to find those opportunities. And I try and just do a little bit each day. But if you're tired, maybe only one email. Other days you might send 6 or 7. I just kind of played it by ear because it wasn't something that I needed, because financially I was okay. I think that was the nice benefit. And then when things started coming through, then sometimes might have a busy week and then sort of hold off on the cold emailing people to make sure I can get through the writing that I need to do when I need to do it, and kind of arrange it that way. So I'm probably not being as productive as some people, but I'm managing it and I'm building up that portfolio, and I think that's kind of the most important thing right now.
Oh, absolutely. That makes the most sense. And there's no reason to compare, apples to oranges. Like I know sometimes I do that too, because I'm like, oh, well, I'm not as productive as that person posting on all their furniture flips on social media, or like, whatever it is, or podcasts, and, comparing. But it's like, this is your journey, and we all have these individual journeys, and hearing your story and where it's led you, like, we're still figuring it out, and that is perfectly okay and acceptable. And I'm so glad you brought up every week is different. I think that's really important to know, because when you do take on freelancing, whether it's full-time, part-time, small scale, big scale, however that looks, it is going to be a very roller coaster of a landscape. And that is perfectly normal as well. And it is great to celebrate the successes when they happen. And if you can't get to something one week, you can't get to it. And that's totally, totally okay and normal. I think life is there's a lot going on.
Definitely, there is a lot going on. And when I wasn't having paid writing opportunities come my way, it was, okay, what can I put on social media? What can I write on my own website? And then when I started getting paid writing opportunities, it was, oh my God, I don't have time for social media. And they just fell by the wayside. And, you read all those blogs and content about you need to keep up with social media, or otherwise the algorithm will screw you over.
Yeah.
And that's true, but at the same time, you shouldn't sacrifice yourself and your social life and everything else just to keep up with everything. You need to balance it according to your life, not according to what people online tell you.
Yeah, 100%. Yes, absolutely. A lot of those articles are written by social media companies who just want you to stay on there. So they're like, do it. But yeah, the comparison mode, or kind of going back to something you touched on, like when you're getting feedback and others are telling you you're not good enough, and then you start to believe that. And then you go into these things and read, well, I should be doing this, I should be doing this. And then you get in this, it's just kind of this vicious cycle. I know, because I'm in it. I find myself in it more often than I would like to admit. And I'm getting better, but I feel like sometimes I just get caught up. Something I see, like an article, like you just mentioned, I'm like, oh, it just triggers my mind. Where I'm like, oh, I need to be doing this. I need to be doing this. But really, we can figure this out for ourselves and kind of make it our own. And we're doing our best. We are doing our best.
No, definitely. I mean, I've been the person on the other side of the screen writing articles, being like, this is the best things for you to do. And it's never an intent of this is what everyone should be doing. And if you're writing with that intent, I think that's a shame. If you're kind of that closed-minded, it's more, these are recommendations or things that people can try and do best case scenario, but we're not best case scenario every day, and we shouldn't try to be either.
Right. Absolutely. We shouldn't. And sometimes when starting our own thing on the side or jumping in full time, it can be hard, not for everybody. Maybe it's just me, but to not feel that you have to do all of the things. So I think that's really important to bring up, and we can kind of create our own personal work culture and how we do our best work, knowing that it's exactly how it needs to be done on that particular day. and that that's perfectly okay. And Hannah, you've shared so many pieces of wisdom and your personal experiences that are really, I know it really resonates with me because, kind of the mental health aspect and taking care of yourself and making choices that are really going to put you in a place where you can thrive and do work that is meaningful. And if you had a piece of advice for someone listening in right now who might be trying to figure things out, they're in the early stages, they're trying to figure it out, but they don't know what direction to go. Do you have any advice for someone like that?
I think the biggest piece of advice would be take your hand off the panic button, because I have hit that button so many times that I should have learned that lesson by now, but I still struggle with it. But even in the past year, I could have had a bad day at work and suddenly I'm on the job boards looking at everything. I'm taking online quizzes to say, what am I meant to do with my life? And looking for someone else to give me the answer. And I think one of the biggest things I've learned, and I'm still struggling with, but I'm aware of, is that no one is going to give me the answer. There's no sort of master person who will come down and say, this is what you're meant to do in life. I wish there was, but there isn't. So you just kind of have to, when you feel like that, take a step back and be like, okay, what's wrong? Why am I trying to panic? And then just figuring it out slowly and taking your time. Because people say life is short. It's not that short. Things happen really quickly. Some things happen really slowly. There's no timeline. So I think just don't freak out. And if you can take that step back and kind of assess where you are so you can provide yourself the answers you need, then that's probably the best thing that I think you could do.
That is great advice. I have definitely been there with that panic button. I think back to all of my corporate jobs and having one bad day. I'm on LinkedIn looking at the job board, feeling like there's some retaliation here when really, no, didn't need to do that. Probably needed to communicate something on my own or ask a question or what have you. So that's really solid advice. And I think a lot of us can resonate with that. And Hannah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing so much and letting me pick your brain with all my random questions. Where can people find you? How can they connect with you? How can they read things that you have written? Where can they find you? All the places.
So I'm on LinkedIn. You can look at me on Hannah Slack, PhD. That's my personal profile. I also have a website called topdogwords.co.uk. Excuse the name. I don't know what I was thinking. But on there, that's kind of got my portfolio, and I have a not super well maintained blog, but I do put things up somewhere. And I also have a LinkedIn account for that business. So you can find me on there, and anything I'm doing will be posted on there as well.
Amazing. Hannah, thank you so much. It was just a lovely reconnecting with you, and I appreciate you being on and sharing.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was lovely to see you again.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Career Flipper. Be sure to connect with Hannah using the links in the show notes. And make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to stay up to date on career flipping episodes every single week. If you have your own career flip story that you'd like to share, visit thecareerflipper.com to submit your story to be on a future episode. I hope that you'll keep on your path. Every single step matters, and even the tiniest of steps can make the biggest impact. So keep going. What's the best that could happen?